Welcome. Um, in this video, I want to show you something. It's a little more subtle. It's a little more advanced. This thing I want to show you right now. But what it is called absolute references. And I'm gonna show you what absolute references are and what they mean. Um, right now in this spreadsheet, we have maybe a business called Fashion Unlimited. We have items like hats, quantities, unit prices. Let's try to fill this out. So if we have a quantity of 26, a unit price of this, about $20, what would be the total price? Well, it's multiplication. So I'm gonna do an equal sign here and just multiply these two values with a percent sign. And there you go. So what's really neat is you could just fill down. We love the fill down handle. Now, discount. If you were to do this activity, you might say, geez, how do I get the discount? Well, there's a discount right here. How do you get 11%? The 0.11 means 11%. How do you get 11% of a number? I mentioned it in an earlier video. A percentage of a number is always multiplication. So what we can do, what you would have to do here is say equals this value times this value. But what's going to happen? Do you see this purple value, E7? If I hit enter and then fill down, E7 is going to turn to E8, E9, E10. And we want that. When we fill down, we want E7 to turn to E8, E9, E10. But here's the problem. You see B3 over here, this orange reference? When we fill this down, B3 is going to go down as well. So the question is, how do we keep B3 locked in? Well, first of all, what I'm going to do is show you the wrong way. If you do not make B3 an absolute reference, I'm going to hit enter. And for this first value, it's going to work. But if I fill down, I'm quite certain there's going to be an error message. Watch. You get zeros and value error messages. And you say, why? What happened? Well, look, you said E7, this purple value, times this orange one. But when we fill down, B3 is going to turn to B4, B5, B6. We don't want B3 to change. So what we need to do to make this an absolute reference is we say $B, $3. Okay, now I'm going to hit enter. Okay, then I'm going to come here and fill down. And guess what? It works this time. Why? Because let's look here. We say E9 times B3. $B, $3 is an absolute reference. If we fill down when we do a formula with an absolute reference, it will always stay here. It will not move relative to each row. Okay? Now, net price, just to finish this up, I'm going to say equals your total price minus your discount. And because this formula works out, I can just fill down. I didn't need an absolute reference over here because I want each value to work on the corresponding row. So I talked earlier about formatting, so let's highlight this and let's do the dollar signs here, Canadian dollar. And I think we're good. We could highlight this and actually say percent. That's kind of cool. And invoice total, let's do this. How would we add these? We could do a formula to add those 4 cells, but let's do a function. We'll say sum, and then we'll highlight that range. Okay, total quantity, again, I could do sum. And we are all set. Now, that was only a 4-minute tutorial. That worked out pretty good. Just to be the devil's advocate here, I might show you how to do this absolute reference concept in Excel. And again, it's the same thing. First of all, for this example, if I said rate, what's the exchange rate between Canadian and American money? Right now, we're going to say 0.75. So if you have $1 Canadian, you multiply $1 Canadian times 0.75 and then you get your US exchange rate. So this value right here, it's H25. This is a very important value. I'm going to show you one more quick example on how we do absolute reference. Let's say at Johnny's Barber Shop, subtotal here, we're going to say equals the unit cost times the quantity. We're going to, for tax, we need 10% times that value. So we'll say equals 10% times this value. We could say total Canadian is the subtotal plus the tax. So I'll say this plus this. Okay, now for this, I can just fill down with the fill down handle, and that's cool, that works out. But here's the tough part again. Absolute references here we need. If I said, look, I want the, if you were going to pay 26 Canadian, what would the American equivalent be? So what I need to do is take $26 and multiply it by this. Now I'm going to do this. I'm going to say equals this value times this value. And I'm going to do it, $19. That sounds good. But if I fill down, watch what happens in the next row. Uh-oh, what happened? Well, it's multiplying this value times, sorry about that, just had a little interruption. We're going to multiply this blue cell by, we didn't want this H26 to move down. We wanted H25. So how do we make this value here, this green value, stay here even if we fill down? The answer is we need to make it an absolute reference. So I'm going to hit $H, $. Now, by the way, I want to say $25, this value here. So for this cell, we're multiplying this value here times this value, and this value here to H25 is an absolute reference. The value here is F26. This is relative reference. If I fill down, F26 will turn to F27, F28, F29. We want that to change. But over here, this is an absolute reference to H25. We say $H, $25. We hit enter. And if we fill down, oh wow, it works. Okay, wonderful. Now here, if we want, we can get a sum. And I could even just fill across here. So that is how we do absolute references. We need to make the reference to the cell we want. In this case here, it was H25. We say $H, $25. In our other example here, when we set our discount, look what we did. We said $B3, $B, $3 times E7, and we filled down. And thank you for listening, guys. That was 8 minutes, and I hope you understand. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.